The research ship Aurora's Edge moved slowly through space like a giant metal whale. Inside the ship, different alien creatures worked together, each one looking very different from the others. The Zephyrians looked like large insects with 4 arms and shiny black eyes. The Luminari were tall and thin, their bodies glowing with soft blue light. The Korath were covered in scales and had sharp teeth that showed when they talked. All of these aliens thought they were the smartest beings in the galaxy. They had built great cities, traveled between stars, and discovered many secrets of the universe. They were proud of what they had done. Jake Martinez was the only human on the ship. He was not very tall, had brown hair, and looked ordinary compared to the strange aliens around him. The aliens found him interesting but also confusing. They could not understand how humans had learned to travel in space when they looked so weak and simple. Jake worked as a scientist who studied alien life forms. He was good at his job, but the other crew members often ignored his ideas. They thought humans were too new to space travel to know much about anything important. Captain Zix Ka was a Zephyrian who commanded the ship. Her voice made clicking sounds when she talked. She often made jokes about how humans worried too much about small things. The other aliens would laugh when she did this, making Jake feel left out. Velthor was the ship's navigator. He was a luminary whose light grew brighter when he was excited. He thought humans were amusing pets that had somehow learned to use machines. Grathmore was the security chief, a large Korath with muscles under his scales. He believed that only the strongest species deserved to explore space. The ship had been traveling for many days when they found a new planet called Kael'thros Prime. The planet looked empty from space, with no signs of cities or technology. But their sensors showed old buildings hidden under thick jungle growth. Zixka decided to send a small team down to explore. She chose herself, Velthor, Grathmore, and Jake to go together. The aliens were excited about finding new things to study. Jake was excited too, but he was also careful. Something about the planet made him feel uneasy. They took a small shuttle down to the planet's surface. The air was thick and warm, filled with strange smells. Huge trees with purple leaves blocked out most of the sunlight. Vines hung down like curtains, and odd sounds came from the shadows. The team found the old buildings after walking for 2 hours. The structures were made of black stone and covered with symbols that none of them could read. The buildings were arranged in a circle around one large central structure that looked like a fortress. "This is boring," said Grathmore, kicking at some loose stones. "Dead planet, dead buildings, dead everything." Jake knelt down and looked at the symbols more carefully. "Wait," he said. "These markings, they look like warnings." Zixka made a clicking sound that meant she was laughing. "Humans always think everything is dangerous. That is why your species took so long to leave your home planet." Velthor's light flickered with amusement. "Maybe they are warning us about scary plants," he said. The other aliens thought this was very funny. Jake stood up and looked around. Something was wrong. The jungle was too quiet. No birds were singing. No insects were buzzing. Even the wind had stopped blowing. "I think we should scan these buildings before we go inside," he said. "Scan for what?" asked Grathmore. "Ghosts?" "Just to be safe," Jake replied. He pulled out his scanner and pointed it at the nearest building. The device beeped and showed that the walls were very thick and made of metal, not stone. "These aren't regular buildings," he said. "They're designed to keep something inside." Zixka waved one of her 4 arms dismissively. "Or to keep things outside. Ancient aliens probably built these places to hide from storms." The team walked to the central building. Its door was much larger than needed for any of the species they knew about. Strange locks and bars covered the entrance, but time had made them weak. Velthor used his light to cut through the old metal, and the door fell open with a loud crash. Cold air rushed out of the building, carrying a smell that made them all step back. It smelled like old meat and something else they could not identify. Jake's scanner started beeping very fast. "High energy readings," Jake said, looking at his device. "Something in there is still active." "Probably just old machines," said Zixka. She walked into the building first, her footsteps echoing in the darkness. The others followed, but Jake came last, still watching his scanner. Inside, they found long hallways with doors on both sides. Most of the doors were open, showing empty rooms filled with broken equipment. But at the end of the main hallway, they found something different. A huge room opened up before them, filled with strange machines and glowing panels. In the center of the room stood a massive cylinder made of clear material. It was tall enough to hold something 3 times Jake's height. The cylinder was empty now, but thick scratches covered the inside walls. Dark stains marked the bottom of the container. Whatever had been kept inside had not wanted to stay there. Velthor approached one of the control panels. The symbols were the same as the ones outside, but some of them were flashing red. "I think this was some kind of prison," he said. Jake's scanner was beeping so fast it sounded like a continuous alarm. "We need to leave," he said. "Right now." "Don't be such a coward," said Grathmore. "Whatever was here is obviously gone." Zixka studied the control panel with interest. Her species loved solving puzzles and understanding new technology. She began pressing buttons and moving switches, trying to figure out how the machines worked. "Stop," said Jake, moving toward her. "You don't know what those controls do." "That is exactly why I want to find out," Zixka replied. She pressed a large blue button. The machines came to life with a deep humming sound. Lights flashed all around the room. The empty cylinder began to glow and something started to appear inside it. First just a shadow, then something more solid. The thing taking shape was huge and dark. It had too many teeth and claws that looked like knives. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness, and when it moved, it seemed to bend the light around it. "What have you done?" whispered Velthor. The creature in the cylinder raised its head and looked directly at them. It opened its mouth and made a sound that was not quite a roar and not quite a scream. The sound made their bones vibrate and their minds fill with terror. Then, the cylinder opened with a hiss of escaping gas, and the nightmare stepped out into their world. The creature stepped out of the cylinder and stretched its long arms. It was bigger than any of them had imagined. Its body was covered in dark fur that seemed to absorb light. Sharp claws extended from its fingers, each one as long as Jake's hand. When it breathed, steam came out of its mouth like it was on fire inside. The aliens called it a shadow maw, though none of them had ever seen one before. It was the kind of monster that parents used to scare children in bedtime stories. Now it was real, and standing right in front of them. Grathmore was supposed to be the warrior of the group. His people, the Korath, were known for being brave fighters. But when he saw the shadow maw, his legs would not move. His mouth fell open and his scales turned pale. All his training and all his strength meant nothing when faced with something that should not exist. The creature turned its red eyes toward Grathmore first. It could smell his fear. The shadow maw took a step forward, and Grathmore took a step back. Then another. Soon the big warrior was running toward the door, leaving his friends behind. Velthor tried to help by using his special abilities. His people could control light and use it as a weapon. He made his body glow very bright, hoping to blind the monster. Beams of light shot from his hands toward the creature. But something strange happened. The light went right through the shadow maw like it was made of smoke. The creature flickered and became see-through like a ghost. The light attacks did nothing at all. "It can phase," shouted Velthor. "It can become not solid." This was very bad news. If the creature could become like a ghost whenever it wanted, then walls and weapons would not stop it. It could appear anywhere and attack from any direction. Zixka realized she had made a terrible mistake. Her clicking sounds became high and scared. She started running after Grathmore, her forearms waving as she moved. "We must get back to the ship," she screamed. But Jake did not run. While his alien friends panicked and fled, something different happened to him. His breathing became slow and steady. His eyes focused on the creature like he was studying it. His body became very still, like a cat watching a mouse. The other aliens did not understand what they were seeing. In their worlds, when something dangerous appeared, you either fought it with strength or you ran away very fast. Jake was doing neither. He was just standing there, watching. The shadow maw noticed Jake too, It tilted its head like it was confused. This small creature was not running or attacking. It was just looking. The monster had never encountered anything like this before. Jake began to move, but not away from the creature. He moved to the side, always keeping his eyes on the shadow maw. He was studying how it moved, how it breathed, how it decided what to do next. The creature lunged forward with incredible speed. Its claws swept through the air where Jake had been standing just a moment before. But Jake was no longer there. He had moved at exactly the right time, like he had known what the creature would do. "How did he do that?" whispered Velthor from near the doorway. The shadow maw attacked again, this time becoming solid just as its claws reached for Jake. Again, the human was not there. He had rolled under a table and come up on the other side. The creature's claws hit the metal table instead, leaving deep scratches in the steel. Jake picked up a piece of broken equipment from the floor. It was heavy and had sharp edges, but instead of trying to hit the creature with it, he threw it against the wall behind the shadow maw. The noise made the monster spin around to look. While the creature was distracted, Jake moved to a different position. He was starting to understand something important about this monster. It was very strong and very fast, but it was also very simple. It reacted to sounds and movements without thinking first. The shadow maw turned back toward Jake and roared. The sound was so loud it made dust fall from the ceiling. The creature's mouth opened wide, showing rows of teeth like broken glass. Acid dripped from its jaws and burned holes in the floor. Jake noticed this too. The acid, the phasing ability, the speed, the strength. He was making a list in his mind of everything the creature could do. But he was also making a list of things it could not do. The monster charged again, but this time Jake did something unexpected. Instead of moving to the side, he ran straight toward the creature. At the last second, he dropped to the floor and slid between the shadow maw's legs. The creature tried to grab him, but its claws passed through empty air. Jake rolled to his feet behind the monster and immediately started running toward the door. But he was not running in panic like the others had done. He was running with purpose, like he had a plan. The shadow maw spun around and chased after him. Its heavy footsteps shook the ground. But Jake was already thinking several steps ahead. He knew exactly where he wanted to go and why. In the hallway, Jake found his alien friends huddled together near the exit. They were arguing about whether to go back for him or run to the shuttle. "Jake!" shouted Zixka when she saw him. "Run! It is right behind you!" The shadow maw burst through the doorway like a dark wave. Its red eyes swept across the group, trying to decide which one to kill first. The aliens pressed themselves against the walls, too scared to move, but Jake did not look scared anymore. He looked focused and calm, like a scientist working on an interesting problem. He looked at the creature, then at the hallway, then at the doors along the walls. He was planning something. "This way," Jake said quietly. He started walking down the hallway, not fast, not slow, just walking. The shadow maw followed him, its claws clicking on the stone floor. The other aliens watched in amazement as their human friend led the monster deeper into the building instead of toward the exit. "What is he doing?" whispered Velthor. They were about to find out that Jake Martinez was not just a scientist who studied alien creatures. He was a human who had grown up on a world full of dangerous things. And on Earth, the most dangerous creature of all was the one that could think. Jake walked slowly down the long hallway with the shadow maw following behind him. The creature was being careful now. It had learned that this small human was different from the others. This one did not run in fear or attack without thinking. The two alien friends followed at a safe distance, too curious and scared to leave, but too frightened to get close. They watched Jake move through the building like he knew exactly where he was going. But that was impossible. None of them had been in this place before. Jake stopped at a door marked with red symbols. He looked at the markings for a moment, then pushed the door open. Inside was a room full of broken machines and twisted metal. Pipes ran along the walls, some of them still glowing with energy. The shadow maw entered the room after Jake, its red eyes scanning for danger. But Jake was already moving to the far side of the room. He picked up a piece of metal pipe and tested its weight in his hands. Then he threw it at one of the glowing pipes on the wall. Sparks flew everywhere when the metal hit the pipe. Electricity danced through the air in bright blue lines. The shadow maw jumped back and made an angry sound. When the electricity touched its body, the creature could not phase through it. The energy forced it to stay solid. Jake saw this and smiled for the first time since the creature had appeared. He had found something important. The monster could turn into a ghost, but not when electricity was touching it. The creature realized it had been tricked. Its simple mind began to understand that the human was not just running away. The human was leading it somewhere on purpose. The shadow maw roared and charged across the room, its claws reaching for Jake. But Jake was already gone. He had rolled under a table and crawled through a hole in the wall that led to the next room. The shadow maw crashed into the wall where Jake had been, leaving deep cracks in the stone. In the next room, Jake found more useful things. This room had been used to store chemicals in glass containers. Most of the containers were broken now, but some still held dangerous liquids. Jake could smell acid, poison, and other things that could hurt living creatures. Jake picked up a container filled with yellow liquid. He threw it at the floor near the doorway, right where the shadow maw would step when it entered the room. The glass broke and the liquid spread across the floor, eating holes in the stone with a hissing sound. When the shadow maw came through the door, it stepped in the acid. The creature screamed and lifted its foot. Smoke rose from its claws where the acid had touched them. Now the monster was hurt and angry. Jake was already in the next room, but this time he stopped and turned around. He wanted the creature to see him. He wanted it to follow him to exactly the right place. The shadow maw limped after Jake, leaving acid burns on the floor with each step. Its red eyes glowed brighter with rage. It wanted to tear this troublesome human apart with its claws. But Jake led the creature through room after room, each one with a different trap waiting. In one room, he used broken glass to cut the creature's feet. In another room, he turned on old machines that made loud noises, confusing the monster's sensitive hearing. The alien friends followed the path of destruction, amazed by what they saw. Jake was not just fighting the shadow maw. He was teaching it that following him was dangerous. Each room made the creature weaker and more careful. Six-Ka began to understand what Jake was doing. He is using the building itself as a weapon. She clicked in amazement. Velthor watched Jake lead the creature into another trap. But how does he know what each room contains? We have never been here before. Grathmore was quiet for a long time. Then he said something that surprised the others. He reads the symbols on the doors, the warnings we could not understand. Somehow, the human figured out what they mean. This was true. Jake had been looking at the symbols since they first entered the building. While the aliens ignored the markings, Jake had been learning their meaning. Humans were very good at recognizing patterns and solving puzzles. It was how they survived on their dangerous homeworld. Now Jake knew which rooms contained electricity, which ones had chemicals, and which ones had machines that still worked. He was using this knowledge to hurt the creature bit by bit. The shadow maw was getting tired. Phasing through walls and becoming solid again took a lot of energy. The acid burns on its feet made every step painful. The cuts from the broken glass were bleeding. The loud noises had hurt its ears. For the first time in its long life, the creature was afraid. It had always been the hunter. Other creatures ran from it in terror. But now it was being hunted by something smaller and weaker than itself. Something that used tricks instead of teeth and claws. Jake led the monster to a room near the center of the building. This room was different from the others. It had thick walls and only one door. Jake entered the room and moved to the far corner. Then he turned around and waited. The shadow maw appeared in the doorway, breathing hard. Its red eyes stared at Jake with hatred. The creature knew this was some kind of trap, but it was too angry to care. It wanted to kill the human who had caused it so much pain. Jake stood very still and watched the creature. He was counting in his head, measuring the distance between himself and the monster. He was calculating how fast it could move and how long it would take to reach him. The shadow maw gathered its strength for one final attack. It would kill this annoying human, and then hunt down the others. It roared and leaped forward with all its remaining power. But Jake was ready. At the exact right moment, he pressed a button on the wall behind him. Emergency lights began flashing throughout the room. Magnetic fields activated in the walls, creating invisible barriers that the creature could not phase through. The Shadow Maw crashed into the magnetic field and bounced back, stunned and confused. It tried to phase through the barrier but could not. It was trapped in the room with the human, unable to use its greatest advantage. Jake looked at the creature and spoke for the first time since the hunt had begun. "Now," he said quietly, "let me show you what humans really are." The alien friends outside heard strange sounds coming from the room. Not the roars of the monster, but new sounds they had never heard before. They pressed their faces to the small window in the door and saw something that would change their understanding of humans forever. Jake Martinez was no longer running from the apex predator. He was dismantling it. The Shadow Maw was trapped in the room with Jake, but it was still very dangerous. The creature was 12 feet tall with claws like knives and teeth that could bite through metal. Jake was just a human with no special powers and no weapons except his mind. The magnetic field kept the monster from phasing through the walls, but it could still move around the room. It could still attack with its claws and acid spit. The creature circled Jake like a giant cat hunting a mouse. Jake did not look afraid. He looked like a doctor studying a sick patient. His eyes followed every movement the creature made. He watched how it breathed, how it moved its arms, how it shifted its weight from one foot to the other. Outside the room, the three aliens pressed against the window to see what would happen. They expected to see their human friend torn apart by the monster. Instead, they saw something impossible. Jake began to move around the room in a pattern. He was not running or trying to escape. He was moving with purpose, like he was following a plan that only he could see. The Shadow Maw followed him, trying to corner him against the walls, but every time the creature thought it had Jake trapped, the human was somewhere else. Jake seemed to know exactly where the monster would attack before it happened. He moved just enough to avoid the claws, just far enough to escape the snapping teeth. The creature became frustrated. It had never had to work this hard to catch prey before. Usually other creatures ran in straight lines or froze in terror. This human was different. He moved like he could see the future. Jake picked up a piece of broken metal from the floor. It was not very big, but it had a sharp edge. The Shadow Maw saw the weapon and laughed, a sound like breaking glass. What could such a tiny piece of metal do against a creature like itself? Jake did not try to stab the monster with the metal. Instead, he threw it at a control panel on the wall. Sparks flew when the metal hit the panel. New lights began flashing, and the room's air began to move differently. The Shadow Maw felt the change immediately. The air was becoming thicker, harder to breathe. Jake had turned on a system that changed the air in the room. The creature needed regular air to live, but Jake was slowly taking it away. But this was only the beginning. Jake moved to another panel and broke it open with his hands. Inside were wires of different colors. He pulled out specific wires and connected them in a new way. More changes happened in the room. The floor became electrified in certain spots. Jake knew where the electricity was, but the Shadow Maw did not. When the creature stepped on the wrong place, electricity shot through its body. The monster could not phase when the electricity touched it, so it had to stay solid and feel the pain. Jake was changing the room into a trap that got more dangerous every minute. He used his knowledge of science and technology to turn every system in the room against the creature. The lights, the air, the floor, the walls, everything became a weapon. The Shadow Maw tried to attack Jake directly, but the human was always ready. When the creature lunged with its claws, Jake ducked and rolled away. When it tried to spit acid, Jake was behind a metal table that protected him. When it roared to frighten him, Jake used the noise to cover the sound of him breaking more equipment. Grathmore watched through the window with his mouth open. "This is not possible," he whispered. "The human has no claws, no armor, no special powers. How is he winning?" Zixka was clicking rapidly, a sign that she was thinking very hard. "He is not fighting the creature," she said. "He is solving it like a puzzle, He is taking apart its advantages one by one. Velthor's light was flickering with excitement and fear. Look at his eyes, he said. They are not the eyes of prey. They are the eyes of a hunter. This was true. Jake's eyes had changed. They were focused and cold, like a machine designed for one purpose. He was not seeing the Shadow Maw as a monster anymore. He was seeing it as a problem that needed to be solved. Jake found the creature's weak spot by watching how it moved. When the Shadow Maw turned its head to the left, it was slightly slower to defend its right side. When it raised its arms to attack, its stomach was unprotected for just a moment. Jake began to use these weaknesses. He threw small objects at the creature's right side when its head was turned. He touched electrified surfaces to the monster's stomach when its arms were raised. Each time, the Shadow Maw felt pain and became more confused. The creature was getting weaker. The strange air made it tired. The electricity burns hurt every time it moved. The cuts on its feet were still bleeding. But worst of all, it was becoming afraid. Fear was something new for the Shadow Maw. It had always been the thing that others feared. Now it was learning what terror felt like. The human was not just hurting its body. He was breaking its spirit. Jake made his final move when the creature was at its weakest. He had been preparing for this moment since the fight began. He had broken the right panels, connected the right wires, and positioned himself in exactly the right place. The Shadow Maw made one last desperate attack, throwing all its remaining strength at the human. Its claws reached for Jake's throat, ready to end the fight once and for all. Jake pressed a button on the wall. Every magnetic field in the room activated at the same time. The creature was caught between dimensional forces that pulled it in different directions. Its phasing ability turned against it, trying to make it solid and ghost-like at the same time. The Shadow Maw screamed as its own power tore it apart. The sound was not angry anymore. It was afraid and confused and full of pain. The creature that had terrorized entire civilizations was being destroyed by a single human, using nothing but intelligence and determination. Jake stood quietly in the center of the room as the monster's screams faded away. When it was over, nothing remained of the Shadow Maw except dark stains on the floor and the memory of its terror. The human looked at his hands and saw they were shaking slightly. But his voice was steady when he spoke to his friends outside the Tursa. It's safe now, he said. You can come in. The aliens entered the room slowly, afraid of what they might find, but they found only Jake, standing calmly among the broken equipment like he had just finished a normal day's work. How? Whispered Grathmore. How did you do that? Jake looked at him with tired eyes. I learned, he said simply. That's what humans do. We learn and then we adapt and then we survive. The aliens realized they had been looking at humanity all wrong. Humans were not weak creatures who got lucky. They were the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. They just hunted, with their minds instead of their teeth. Jake sat down on a piece of broken equipment and pulled out a small medical kit from his pocket. He had several cuts on his arms and one on his face where debris had hit him during the fight. He cleaned the wounds carefully and put bandages on. Them like this was something he did every day. The three aliens stood in the doorway and watched him work. They could not speak. What they had just seen was impossible, but it had happened right in front of them. Their minds were trying to understand how everything they knew about the universe had just changed. Jake pulled out a small device and began recording notes about what had happened. He spoke in a calm, quiet voice as he described the creature's abilities, its weaknesses, and how he had defeated it. To him, this was just another day of scientific research. Subject showed advanced phasing capabilities, Jake said into his recorder, vulnerable to electromagnetic interference. Acid production decreased when creature became fatigued. Next time, I should try using sonic frequencies to disrupt its nervous system earlier in the encounter. Zixka heard the words, next time, and her clicking sounds became very high and scared. Next time? She asked. You want to fight another one of these creatures? Jake looked up at her with surprise. Of course, this was just one example. There might be others like it on different planets. I need to learn more about how they work so I can help protect other people who might encounter them. Velthor's light flickered weakly. His people were known for being wise and thoughtful, but he felt very stupid right now. "You are not afraid?" he asked. "Afraid of what?" Jake replied. "It's dead. The danger is over." But that was not what Velthor meant. He was asking if Jake was afraid of himself. The human had just destroyed a creature that entire civilizations had considered unstoppable. He had done it alone, with no weapons except his mind. And now he was talking about doing it again like it was a fun hobby. Grathmore finally found his voice. "My people are warriors," he said slowly. "We train our whole lives to fight and protect others. But what you just did, that was not fighting. That was something else." Jake stood up and put his medical kit away. "It was problem solving," he said. "Every dangerous situation is just a problem that needs the right solution. You identify the variables, test different approaches, and keep trying until you find what works." The aliens looked at each other. They were beginning to understand something terrible and wonderful at the same time. Humans did not see dangerous creatures as monsters to be feared. They saw them as puzzles to be solved. "How many creatures like this live on your home world?" asked Zixka. Jake thought about this for a moment. "Well, Earth has sharks, bears, lions, snakes, spiders, crocodiles, and lots of other predators. But they're not really like this one. Most Earth predators are not as big or as dangerous as the shadow maw." The aliens felt cold when they heard this. Jake was saying that his home planet was full of dangerous creatures and he thought they were less scary than the monster he had just killed. "But how do humans survive on such a world?" asked Velthor. "We learn," Jake said simply. "We study each creature until we understand how it thinks and how it hunts. Then we figure out how to avoid it, trap it, or fight it if we have to. After a few thousand years, we got pretty good at it." Grathmore was quiet for a long time. Then, he asked the question that was frightening all of them. "What does that make humans?" Jake looked confused. "What do you mean?" "If you can defeat any predator by studying it and understanding it," Grathmore said carefully, "then what are humans in the food chain?" Jake had never thought about this question before. He considered it while they walked back through the building, toward their shuttle. "I guess humans are whatever we need to be," he said finally. "If something is hunting us, we become better hunters. If something is trying to kill us, we become harder to kill. We adapt." The aliens walked behind Jake in silence. They were starting to understand why humans had seemed so strange when they first met them. Humans looked weak and fragile, but that was because they did not need to be physically strong. They had something much more dangerous than claws or teeth or armor. They had minds that could turn any situation into a learning experience. When they reached their shuttle, Jake immediately began writing a detailed report about what had happened. He drew pictures of the creature, made notes about the building's technology, and created plans for what to do if they encountered something similar in the future. "Aren't you tired?" asked Zixka. "Don't you want to rest?" "I want to finish this, while the information is still fresh in my memory," Jake replied. "This data could save lives if other people meet creatures like this one." The aliens realized that they had been completely wrong about humans from the beginning. They had thought humans were a young, primitive species that had gotten lucky with technology. But now they understood the truth. Humans were not primitive. They were evolved. Every human carried inside them the survival instincts of millions of years spent as prey animals who learned to become predators. They had survived on a world so dangerous that intelligence became their primary weapon. When they returned to the Aurora's edge, the aliens sent messages to their home planets. The messages all said the same thing in different ways. "We have discovered something important about humans. They are not what they appear to be." Zixka wrote in her report, "Humans do not fight creatures. They solve them. This makes them far more dangerous than any physical predator because they can defeat enemies that should be impossible to beat." Velthor's message was shorter but more frightening. Humans see every dangerous situation as a chance to learn something new. They are not afraid of monsters, they are curious about them. Grathmore's report was the most honest. I have been a warrior my whole life, but I learned today that I am not a predator. Humans are predators. We are just animals who learned to use tools. Humans are something else entirely. Jake never saw these messages. He was too busy planning their next research mission. He had heard about a planet where the local wildlife could control gravity, and he was very excited to study how their abilities worked. The other species in the galaxy would soon learn what the crew of the Aurora's Edge had discovered. Humans were not the weak, lucky creatures they appeared to be. They were the most successful predators in the universe, and they hunted using the most dangerous weapon ever created, the human mind. But Jake Martinez just thought of himself as a scientist who liked to learn new things. He had no idea that he had just changed how the entire galaxy would think about his species forever. To him, it had just been an interesting day at work.